He hadn't spoken to another soul in 16 years. Buried in silence, drowning in grief, rancher Ethan Cole believed his story had ended the day his son vanished. But on one stormy night, as thunder shook the earth and rain slammed against the roof, 10 strangers appeared at his gate, dripping wet, eyes full of fear, and carrying a secret so devastating it would tear open wounds Ethan thought were long dead. What they said that night didn't just shake him. It shattered his world and uncovered a truth the government would kill to keep buried. The wind howled through the empty plains as thunder cracked in the sky like a warning shot from the heavens. Rain slammed against the brittle windows of an old wooden house, standing alone in the middle of a vast, forgotten ranch in New Mexico. Inside, 61-year-old rancher Ethan Cole sat at his creaky table, sipping bitter black coffee, staring at the fire that barely lit the room. He'd lived alone for 16 years, since his wife passed and his son disappeared without a trace. Since then, Ethan had closed himself off from the world, choosing silence over sorrow and routine over risk. The world had become a place he no longer trusted. But on this particular night, something changed. The storm was loud, but what woke Ethan wasn't thunder. It was a sound no one expects to hear in the middle of nowhere. 10 hard knocks on his front door. His hands froze midair. Who could possibly be out there in weather like this? No one ever came to his ranch. Slowly, he rose, grabbed the shotgun from behind the door, and opened it just wide enough to see. There, under the fury of the storm, stood 10 Native American men, Apaches, wrapped in soap blankets, their eyes heavy with fear, hunger, and something else, something unspoken. They didn't flinch at the gun. They didn't speak. They just stood there, drenched, silent, waiting. Ethan hesitated. Old instincts warned him to shut the door. This was no ordinary visit. Yet something in their faces, a mixture of exhaustion, desperation, and pride, stopped him. Finally, one of them stepped forward, a younger man with sharp eyes and a trembling voice. "We don't want trouble, sir. We just need shelter for tonight." His voice cracked like the lightning behind him. Ethan's grip on the gun tightened. The memories of old stories, the ones his father told him about clashes with the Apaches, rushed into his mind. But these weren't warriors with weapons. These were men on the edge. Wet, tired, silent. Still 10 of them. Ethan looked behind them. No horses. No wagons. Just mud-soaked boots and shivering bodies. Something didn't add up. Why were they traveling on foot? Why this far into white man's land? Why now? He knew the land better than anyone, and this land hadn't seen an Apache soul in decades. He stepped aside. Without a word, the 10 men entered, one by one, heads bowed, grateful but cautious. Ethan led them to the barn, dry and warm enough for a night. He lit the lanterns and handed them some old blankets. No one spoke, not even a whisper. Ethan stood at the barn door, watching them settle down, still unsure if he had made the right choice. But their silence said more than any words could. Something was haunting these men. Back in the house, Ethan couldn't sleep. The storm outside had passed, but something colder now pressed against his chest. He stared out the window, eyes on the barn, unease crawling over his skin. These men weren't just lost travelers. They were hiding from something or someone, and he had invited them in. Just before dawn, a quiet knock came again. Not at the door, but the window. Ethan sprang to his feet and yanked it open. The same young Apache stood there, soaked again but calm. "Please," he whispered. "I need to talk. Alone." Ethan let him in. The young man stood by the fire, steam rising from his wet clothes. His name was Tahu, and his voice shook as he spoke. "We are not just seeking shelter. We are fleeing." Ethan narrowed his eyes. "From what?" Tahu looked down, then met his gaze. "From men who wear the law like a mask. They hunt us like wolves. Not for what we've done, but for what we know." Ethan didn't blink. "What do you know?" Tahu stepped closer, lowering his voice. "There's a military train crossing our land in 2 days. We saw them burying crates they won't let anyone near. And we saw them kill a child who wandered too close. They think no one noticed, but we did. We saw everything." Ethan's jaw clenched. He had once served in the army. He knew what men in uniform were capable of when no one was watching. But this was something else. Tahu continued. We tried to report it. No one listened. The sheriff's in their pocket. Then they came for us. One by one. Burned huts. Disappeared elders. That's why we ran. We were the last left. Ethan's blood ran cold. The man wasn't lying. His voice, his eyes, they carried the weight of truth. And fear. Deadly fear. He poured Tahu a cup of coffee, hands trembling slightly. Why come to me? Tahu looked him straight in the eye. Because you live outside their reach. Because they think you're alone. And because we know who you are. Ethan froze. You know me. Tahu nodded slowly. Your son, James Cole. He wasn't taken. He joined us. The cup slipped from Ethan's hand and shattered on the floor. Tahu didn't flinch. He didn't vanish. He found something worth fighting for. He stayed to protect us. He taught us how to read maps, how to track, how to survive. He is one of us now. And he sent us to you. He said if anything ever happened, you would help. Ethan couldn't breathe. The son he had mourned for 16 years wasn't dead. He had chosen a different life. A life in hiding. A life in resistance. The weight of the years crushed down on Ethan's chest. He sat, stunned, heart racing, mind spiraling. The silence he had built his life around had just been shattered by a truth he never saw coming. Tahu placed a worn leather pouch on the table. Inside was a photo, faded but unmistakable. Ethan and his son, standing side by side on the ranch porch years ago. On the back, scrawled in James's handwriting. If they come, trust them. They carry the truth. Ethan stared at the picture, then back at Tahu. The fire cracked behind them, but it was nothing compared to the fire now roaring in Ethan's soul. Something was coming. Something far bigger than a simple storm. And now he was part of it. Ethan's fingers trembled as he held the faded photograph in the dim firelight. The memory it captured was old, but the emotions it stirred were painfully alive. James, his only son, the boy he raised to be honest, strong and brave, was alive. Not lost, not missing, not dead, but hiding, living among these Apaches, risking his life to protect them from forces Ethan didn't yet fully understand. For 16 years, Ethan had buried his grief deep in his chest. And now, in a single moment, it had all resurfaced and turned into something else. Fire, fury, purpose. Tahu watched him silently, respectfully, letting the weight of truth settle before speaking again. He wanted to tell you. He tried once. But the people watching us, they intercepted the letter. Burned it in front of him. He's still with us. But he couldn't risk coming here. If they saw him, they'd know where we were going. You were the last safe place. Ethan leaned forward, his voice low and rough. What's in the crates? Tahu glanced toward the window. The barn was still in view. The others inside sleeping or silently waiting. We don't know exactly, but we've seen the markings, chemical warnings, federal seals, not military standard. Whatever it is, it's not meant for warfare. It's meant for silence. We believe it's something they're testing, something they don't want discovered. They've buried it in remote places, but we've tracked the path. Ethan rubbed his weathered hands together, his mind turning, and they killed a child. Tahu nodded. A 7-year-old girl, just picking berries. She wandered too close. No warning, just a shot. We buried her ourselves. His voice cracked at the last word, and Ethan saw the grief beneath the strength. I'm not a hero, Ethan muttered, standing and pacing. I'm a tired old man with a rusty shotgun and a broken life. What the hell can I do against all this? You're more than that, Tahu said quietly. You're James's father, and James believes in you. The words pierced Ethan's heart. Belief. It had been years since he felt believed in, or believed in anything. But something was changing inside him. The rage he had buried for years was now awakening, and it was ready to burn. He didn't speak again. He walked to his closet, pulled out an old trunk, and set it on the table. Inside were remnants of a man he once was, maps, service medals, a hunting knife, and a weathered revolver he hadn't touched in a decade. He loaded it slowly, carefully, then turned back to Tahu. If we're doing this, he said, we do it smart. We do it quiet, but we finish it. Tahu nodded. Then we start tonight. By sunrise, the storm had passed completely. The sky was washed in gold, but the air held a strange stillness. The 10 Apaches gathered near the barn, waiting. Ethan approached them, every step deliberate. He saw their hunger, their exhaustion, and yet, beneath it all, a sense of unity, of purpose. These weren't just survivors. They were a resistance, and now he was part of it. Tahu unrolled a leather map on the barn floor, marked with trails and symbols Ethan quickly understood. The supply train will stop in Echo Valley, Tahu explained. 2 nights from now, they'll unload the crates into a hidden facility buried in the rocks. The entrance is disguised as a water station. And the guards? Ethan asked. Armed. At least 12. Maybe more. Ethan studied the terrain. Narrow canyons. 1 road in, 1 out. We don't attack the train. That's suicide. But if we intercept the path to the facility, block the supply route, we can expose what they're carrying. We just need proof. One of the older Apaches, a man with gray in his braids, spoke up. They have motion sensors. Surveillance. Anyone spotted is marked. Then we stay invisible, Ethan said. We use the land. Let them come to us. That day, they worked in silence, preparing. Ethan showed them old military tactics, how to set traps, how to move without leaving signs. He hadn't trained in years, but it came back quickly, like muscle memory powered by conviction. As the sun dipped behind the hills, they moved out. The journey to Echo Valley took 6 hours by foot, through rugged trails only locals would know. As they climbed over jagged rocks and waded through brush, Ethan felt alive in a way he hadn't in years. Every heartbeat was driven by something bigger than himself. James, the child who had been killed, the truth buried under crates of lies. When they reached the valley's ridge, they could see the tracks below. The facility wasn't a building. It was a black opening in the rock face, half covered by fencing and guarded by trucks. A water station sign hung above it, faded and fake. Ethan pulled out a set of binoculars. He counted men, watched their patterns. 2-man shifts, every 4 hours. But look there, between the trees. Power cables leading to a secondary unit. That's the surveillance hub. Tahu nodded. We can cut it. Not yet, Ethan said. We wait for the train. We catch them in the act. They camped out under the cover of night, hidden in the rocks, not daring to light a fire. Every whisper carried weight. Every sound was a risk. Ethan sat with his back against a boulder, eyes scanning the horizon, mind replaying James's face from the photo. Was he still alive? Where was he now? Watching them? Planning something bigger? Just past midnight, a distant rumble filled the air. The train was coming. They watched as it rolled in slow, headlights piercing the dark. 3 cars. Armed guards jumped down immediately. Ethan counted at least 15. Tahu's hand tightened on his knife. The crates were unloaded quickly. No labels. Just red X marks painted on the sides. Guards surrounded each one as they were wheeled into the tunnel. Then something strange happened. One of the crates tipped slightly. A metallic clang rang out, and the side cracked open for just a second. From their vantage point, Ethan saw a glimmer of blue liquid inside, thick, glowing, unnatural. The guards yelled, rushed to seal it. 2 men in hazmat suits appeared out of nowhere and hauled the crate inside. Ethan's eyes widened. Tahu leaned close. That's not military. That's a weapon they're hiding. No, Ethan whispered. It's worse. It's a secret they're willing to kill for. Suddenly, one of the guards turned his flashlight up toward the ridge. For a moment, it scanned too close. Ethan froze. The light passed, but the moment had shifted. Time was running out. Tomorrow they would strike. But tonight, the truth had been seen. And now no one was safe. The flashlight beam swept past the ridge and disappeared. But Ethan knew the moment had changed everything. He turned to Tahu, his voice low and urgent. They're suspicious. We move now, before they sweep the area. Tomorrow will be too late. Tahu nodded, signaling silently to the others. Within minutes, the group was descending from the rocks, melting into the terrain like shadows. They moved swiftly through the night, every step calculated, every breath quiet. By the time they reached their fallback spot deep in the canyon woods, dawn was breaking. Ethan spread out the map on a rock slab. We don't need to fight them head-on. We need proof. Something undeniable. That blue liquid, whatever it is, it's the key. Tahu leaned over the map. There's a service hatch here. He pointed. Just off the main tunnel. My brother worked there before he vanished. Said it led to the storage bay. Ethan looked up. Can we reach it undetected? Tahu paused. If we move before sunset, yes. After that, they increase patrols. Ethan's voice hardened. Then tonight we get in, get a sample, and get out. No mistakes. They spent the day hidden, resting, conserving energy. Ethan sat alone near a dry streambed, holding the photograph of James again. He traced his son's face with his thumb, the ache in his chest growing stronger. For years he had thought James abandoned him. Now he knew the truth. James hadn't left. He had chosen something bigger. And now Ethan had too. As the sun dipped behind the hills, they moved out. The air was heavy with tension, the kind that precedes either revelation or death. They reached the facility's rear slope under full darkness. The hatch was just where Tahu said it would be, rusted and half-buried under dirt and brush. With a pry bar and quiet hands, they forced it open. Inside, the air was stale and electric. The narrow corridor hummed with low vibrations. They crept through the dark passage, each footstep echoing like a heartbeat. At the end of the hall was a security panel. Tahu knelt beside it and used a wire pin to disable the lock. The door clicked open, and they stepped into a cold, metallic storage bay. The room was lined with the same black crates, all marked with red excess. Ethan approached one, heart pounding. Tahu found a crowbar and wedged it into the corner. With a snap, the crate cracked open. Inside, vials of glowing blue liquid shimmered under the dim emergency light. Ethan stared, breathless. This isn't a weapon. This is chemical warfare, unregistered, off the books. Tahu's voice shook. They planned to use it, or test it. Ethan grabbed one vial, wrapped it in cloth, and tucked it into his coat. This is enough to blow the lid off everything. Suddenly, footsteps. Guards. Boots echoed from the upper level. Move, Ethan whispered. They slipped back into the hatch tunnel, sealing the door just as flashlights hit the crates. They moved faster now, adrenaline burning in their veins. Back through the corridor, out the hatch, into the trees. But as they fled, a sound cracked through the night, a gunshot. One of the older Apaches fell. Tahu rushed back, dragging him behind cover. Ethan fired his revolver once, hitting a guard's leg before vanishing into the dark. They carried the injured man for miles until they reached the edge of the canyon. Morning light touched the sky, but they weren't safe yet. Ethan knew time was against them. The moment that vial went missing, the military would launch a sweep. So he made a decision. We split, he said. You take the injured back to the ranch. I head to town. Tahu frowned. You won't make it. They'll be watching every road. Ethan's eyes were steel. Let them watch. They'll be looking for Apaches, not an old rancher with a dusty coat. He wrapped the vial tightly and tucked it into a saddlebag. Then he mounted his old Mustang and rode toward the town of Claymore, 20 miles away. Every mile felt like a lifetime. By the time Ethan reached the edge of town, he was soaked in sweat and dust. He didn't go to the sheriff. He went to the local newspaper office. An old friend, Carson, ran the place. Ethan burst through the door and dropped a wrapped vial on the desk. You want a story? He growled. This will change everything. Carson unwrapped it slowly, eyes widening. What the hell is this? Something the military doesn't want the world to see. And a group of Apaches just risked their lives to get it. Carson stared at him, stunned. Are you sure? They killed a child to protect it. That was all Carson needed. Within an hour, he had a reporter, a photographer, and a backup copy of the story ready to print. By sunset, the story hit the press. Leaked evidence suggests secret chemical tests on native land screamed across headlines. Pictures of the blue vial, maps of the Echo Valley route, and witness quotes from Ethan Cole rocked the town. Within hours, federal agents arrived in Claymore. But it was too late. The story had already gone national. By the next morning, protests had erupted. Investigations were ordered. The facility in Echo Valley was shut down, and the crates were seized by federal oversight. Ethan returned to his ranch 3 days later. Tahu and the others were waiting. No words were needed. The look in their eyes said it all. He had done what few dared to do. Not just protect them, but believe them. That night, as stars blanketed the sky, a lone rider approached the ranch. Ethan stood on the porch, shotgun resting by his side. The rider dismounted. It was James. Older, stronger, eyes filled with tears and pride. "Dad," he whispered. Ethan stepped forward, arms shaking. They embraced like men who had lost a lifetime, but found something even greater: forgiveness, purpose, legacy. And in the silent night, the wind carried the echoes of 10 strangers who'd once knocked on a lonely rancher's door, with nothing but fear in their eyes and the truth in their hearts. The porch light flickered as Ethan stepped back from the embrace, staring into James's eyes, the son he had thought gone forever. Time had changed them both, hardened their faces, deepened their silence, but some bonds don't break. They only bend. And tonight, in that long overdue moment, father and son stood whole again, not through words, but through something stronger: understanding. James looked over Ethan's shoulder at the Apaches gathered behind him. "They told me you helped, that you believed them." Ethan nodded slowly. "I didn't just believe them. I saw it. I saw what they were willing to die to protect, and I saw what you became." James's voice was low. "I stayed away to protect you." Ethan shook his head. "And I died a little every day because of it. But now I see. You didn't run. You stood. You became a man worth more than medals or land or legacy. You became a shield." Tao stepped forward, his eyes on James. "Your father saved us. He brought light where no one dared to look." James turned to Ethan again. "Then it's time I stayed. No more hiding." The ranch that had once echoed with loneliness was now alive with the quiet hum of new beginnings. The barn was repaired, the house cleaned. The Apaches stayed on the land for weeks, helping restore what silence had once broken. They worked the soil, repaired fences, and built a perimeter not of walls, but of unity. Ethan sat by the fire one night, James beside him, as the stars burned overhead. He looked out over the land, no longer empty, no longer haunted. "For 16 years, I kept waiting for a knock that would change everything. I never imagined it would come from 10 strangers in the rain." James looked at him, voice full of peace. "Sometimes, the right people arrive when the world thinks they shouldn't." A month later, a federal agent returned, not to arrest anyone, but to offer protection. The investigation into the Echo Valley operation had exposed a network of illegal experimentation, military corruption, and buried crimes against native lands. Ethan's testimony had been pivotal. His quiet life had become a thunderous truth the world couldn't ignore. Before the agent left, he handed Ethan a letter. It was from the family of the little girl who'd been killed. A hand-drawn picture of a blue flower. One line scribbled underneath: "Thank you for seeing us." Ethan folded the letter and placed it beside the photo of James on the mantel. Not all battles are fought with bullets. Some are won with courage, silence, and the decision to open a door. And on one stormy night, when the world was deaf, a rancher listened, and everything changed forever.